Today, I've got a very special treat for you. I've brought on my husband, Herman, to give you some important information. Hey guys, Liz from the Nail Hub here, and today I'm sitting down with my husband, Herman, to talk about what the heck we can do in this current situation that we're in. You and I have been discussing this a lot with the whole COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen a bunch of messages go out from all different types of businesses that we deal with, and all of those sentiments are wonderful when we're in this together and we're sharing those emotions as a community, globally.
Right.
But one of the things that you and I saw that was missing is this whole kind of idea of what the heck do we actually do, right? We can feel things and we can say we're feeling things together, but what do we do with all of this?
Right. And more than anything, we heard from so many of our followers and customers about just, how uncertain they were about the future. They were outright scared about everything that's going on. A lot of anxiety out there.
You and I were also scared as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That includes all of us. Yeah. And so we just thought that it'd be a good opportunity to talk about some possible solutions and just share some important stuff with the people that follow us and that are our customers, and hopefully we can add some value.
Yeah, and a little bit of background too. So Herman is not only the co-founder of the Nail Hub, and he's behind the scenes on everything that we do. He works with, we work together full time on this project, and it's very cool that we're able to collaborate in that way. But one of the other elements that Herman is heavily involved in is personal defense. And a lot of times you don't talk about this, especially with all of our nail people, because, nails and personal defense.
Two different worlds.
It's like sometimes people just go, wait, what? Like that has nothing to do with nails. But in this particular situation, we were discussing that for the first time in a long time, this pandemic situation we're in has kind of put everyone in the same boots, right? Like whether you're a nail tech or you're a UPS driver or you're a doctor or you're a stay-at-home mom or whatever, now we're all kind of in the same position and we're all really freaked out. And so I thought, what better opportunity than to bring Herman on with all of his personal defense expertise. And you can talk a little bit about, personal defense, right? A lot of times people assume personal defense is like teaching karate chops and like all this stuff, right?
Yeah, just to give some context. So this is something that I've been doing for almost 25 years now. And, the stuff that I teach is not, like you said, a lot of people just assume that it's martial arts, related stuff, or, the moves and defenses and all these type of things, which there is some of that. But the things that I focus on the most, which I think are the most beneficial in everything that I teach, are mindset related stuff. So things that get you in the right frame of mind in order to be able to do things like avoid trouble in the first place, right? So with that goes something that I think that's very applicable to what's happening today, which is another really important topic that we teach, which is fear and fear management. Right. And the reason why we thought it was the most important topic to bring up in this video is that we can't really get in the right frame of mind, again, in the mindset, in order to come up with solutions if we don't find a way to understand fear and manage fear so that we can actually get in a better space where we can get to a point where we can actually plan and put into action, put those plans into action. So that's why we thought that this would be the best way to begin this series of a few videos.
Yeah, and we've actually got 4 videos planned for you, just to give you a little bit of a preview on what we're dealing with. So like Herman just mentioned, the most important piece to start with is we need to make sure that everyone is in a cool, calm, collected place, right? Mindset wise. That way, when we go forward and we start talking about things like, actionable items, plans, preparedness, that's the whole idea of why we're starting with this particular video, is because we want to make sure that we're able to like kind of recenter ourselves, all come to the same place, and then we can move forward. But we've got 4 videos planned. So today we're going to be talking about fear in depth and what you can do to manage all of that. Then we're going to be going into preparedness for your place of business, like your work life, which I think most of us, regardless of what we do for a living, we have our work life and then we have our personal life. So we're going to be talking about our preparedness with our work life, and then we're going to be getting into preparedness with our personal life. And then at the very end of this, we've got a Q&A video planned where I'm going to sit down with Hermann again, and he's going to answer all of the questions that you guys might have. We can do a little bit of a wrap up as well, just to make sure that we covered everything that we hope to cover. So as we move through this is really important. As we move through these videos, you can do one of two things. You can absolutely comment below this video and ask us any single thing under the sun about these topics. If you, for whatever reason, don't feel confident or you don't feel cool with posting a public comment that other people are going to see, send us an email too, because you can contact us through our website. We have a contact page on our website, or you can even just send an email to sales@thenailhub.com. I'll put all of that information down below this video just in case you forget. But I do want to make sure that you guys feel comfortable asking questions as we go through, because we're going to save all those questions and make sure that we address, those top ones for our Q&A video.
We really need you guys to help us with this, because we want to make sure that what we're doing is actually fulfilling your needs and that we're not missing anything. And so we're just going to put out as much stuff as we think is going to be valuable, but I'm sure there are going to be some blind spots here and there, some things that we're not going to get to or that we're going to skip over. And so we really want this to be a two-way street here. And so you're a big part of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. And Hermann and I are both the type of people we're big into solutions. We're big into anytime you've got a problem and you want to bring something to the table, come up with at least like 3 proposed solutions to the thing that you want to complain about, right? And that mentality also carries over into everything that we do. And that's kind of what we wanted to share with you is how can we not only complain about the pandemic and all be in that same emotional position of this is really hard for us. I mean, the full spectrum of I'm so bored, I have to stay at home, to I just lost my job and now I've got to figure out, what to do. Or the ultimate sacrifice during this pandemic, which is losing family members, losing friends, seeing illness, death, all of those scary things. This pandemic runs the full gambit of that. And, as we mentioned, we do love sharing that community feeling of like we are in this together and we can support each other emotionally. But this really, Hermann and I wanted it to be something very concrete and something that not only applies to right now in this moment, but is something that you can also apply to yourself and your business as you move forward into the future, right? I mean, it's not just COVID-19 hysteria. It's, hey,
any emergency,
any type of blindsided thing, and we were talking about this earlier, which is it could be something as simple as you break your arm and you can't do nails for 6 to 8 weeks, right? Or, you get like whatever. I mean, there's lots of things that happen to us in our lives. And so we wanted to, this kind of spurred that whole thing, but we wanted to make sure you guys are prepared all the time. So without further ado, I mean, did you have anything else?
No, and you mentioned solutions, and solutions is that's the most important thing. And so just to, quote my personal mentor in the whole personal defense thing, Tony Blauer, he always says, you can't come up with solutions. You can't solve problems if you yourself become a problem, right? And that's what we're trying to address here. Usually one of our biggest problems and one of the things that makes us stay in a place where we can't come up with solutions is fear. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. So we're going to be kind of going over, what is fear? I mean, what are the effects of fear on our lives, and what you guys can really do about this situation and how you can kind of turn it around, just to kind of give you guys a summary on that. But let's start with the first most important thing, which is what the heck is fear?
Right. So fear is, again, we can't go very, very deep in a few minutes, but we're going to give you kind of the big bullet points here. And everybody has felt fear, but the way that we describe it is fear is that movie in your head that shows you all of the bad things that could happen to you if you were to do X or not do X, or, that in a nutshell is what fear is.
Okay.
Okay.
And the what if death spiral also applies to that, because I know me, I don't know if this is just my personality or if a lot of people share this, but like I get into this what if thing, and as soon as I start thinking about it, it's like kind of like that movie. It's like, oh my gosh, what if this happens? What if that happens? Oh my gosh, then what if this happens? And then it just gets into this crazy uncontrollable
So that's
stage.
what we're trying to stop, right? So that's what we call being in the fear loop. When all of that stuff just spirals out of control, you take those thoughts, that movie just keeps going and going and going and gets worse and worse and worse.
Okay.
To the point that leads you to have self-doubt, to hesitate to act because you're so scared, all the way to the point where if it gets completely out of control, to absolute panic.
Okay.
Right?
And so like using this whole COVID-19 thing as an example, I mean, we've seen some crazy stuff on social media and the news, like people punching each other over toilet paper, people just going nuts because they're not quite sure how to handle this situation. I mean, all of that is basically fear in a nutshell, or
Right, that is
elements
basically panic. That's acting out of panic because they got stuck in that fear loop there and now just acting for the sake of acting without actually thinking about it, right? So basically, let's go back to the beginning real quick because how is fear prompted? So you always have a stimulus. You always have something that sparks that fear, right? So for instance, in this case, you turn on the news and they're saying, we're going to shut everything down. You're going to have to stay home for,
it's 2 weeks. What the heck do we do with that?
Right? So that's that event, or that's that stimulus that causes what we call a fear spike. That's when we first feel that, oh my God, what's happening?
Okay.
Right? So that's that fear spike that prompts this whole process. And so when we feel that fear spike, that's what prompts that, turns the flips the switch on that movie. And now that reel starts going, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't have enough food in the house. What's going to happen? What's going to happen with just everything that you could possibly imagine, all the terrible things that you could possibly imagine, the reel just starts going.
Okay.
Right? And like you said, if you just take that to an extreme and you can't stop that reel, you get stuck there, what we call, again, the fear loop, and then you can't act. Okay, so you can't have access to your cognitive brain where you can actually start thinking reasonably and start saying, hey, let's plan something. Let's see how we can get out of this.
Right.
And then, and then put that plan into action. We just get stuck in that negative movie.
Okay. So the fear is that movie that's playing in our head, but there's different elements to that. So we've got the fear spike, which is that initial stimulus, like you mentioned, turning on the TV, seeing that there's a global pandemic, that there's, people getting ill, dying, that businesses are shutting down, the world is shutting down. So that would be our fear spike. Our stimulus is causing this movie to start.
Right.
And then we start playing that movie in our heads.
Right.
And then if we can't get out of that, we get into that fear loop that you mentioned.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And so if we stay watching that movie, that negative movie, that leads to doubt and hesitation. And we've all been there, right?
Yep.
The reason why we think that, all of these bad things are going to happen leads you to think, oh, should I do that? Oh, no, maybe that. Right?
Right.
Oh, no,
indecisive.
Right, because now there's so many, you've seen so many negative things that can happen that now you're just stuck, you're doubting yourself, and also you're hesitating to act.
Right.
Right? So you don't really see a way out of it. And that's what we call it a loop, because it's almost like a self-feeding, loop. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to break that process or that cycle so that we could, like I said, we can actually harness our cognitive brain and we can be able to start thinking clearly and rationally. Right. So the people that got stuck there and spiraled out of control to the point that they panicked, they're making silly decisions like, I'm going to go to the grocery store and go get in a fist fight over 100 rolls of toilet paper.
Right.
That makes absolutely no sense. They're not using their cognitive brain. They're acting out of fear and panic. And so they do silly things like that. And so that's just an example, but we can do it internally at home and not actually just spinning our wheels, not doing anything productive to actually fix the situation that we find ourselves in. Right?
Yeah, you get frozen and you just doing nothing is better than anything because you're just not even sure what the heck to do with yourself.
Yep, that's right.
So, there's an element of, this fear thing, I think we've all felt fear before. But what you're talking about, there's an element of self-awareness to it, right?
Absolutely.
So usually when we're not using our cognitive brain, we're in that panic mode, we're not making the right decisions, we're doubting ourselves, we're hesitating, we're in this kind of like crazy emotional state. It's very hard to be self-aware. It's very hard to be like, wait a minute, maybe like I'm having like a whole fear loop right now, or that obviously triggered me in some way. I need to learn to like shut this down. What are some of the ways that people can realize that they're having that fear experience to begin with.
Yeah,
because a lot of us probably don't even know that that's what's happening until, you know, we start crying or, you know, whatever. And even then it's almost like you're detached from your body. You don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, that's a great question, because even though everybody watching this understands the concept of being afraid, we've all been afraid at some point. But that doesn't really mean much to people other than I feel afraid, right? And so what I think helps, and something that we like to do, is if people understand it from almost a mechanical standpoint, or like what it's actually physiological, what's actually happening inside your body, and you actually start realizing, oh, I get it. I know, now that I think back on it, I understand, you know, what I was feeling. And then when it happens to you in the future, you start recognizing it. So we like to walk through it, again, from a physiological standpoint. So remember that fear spike that we talked about? What happens during that fear spike is what we call an adrenaline dump. You have adrenaline that goes into your body, that's pumped throughout your body by your heart. And this is basically what causes that, you know, your heartbeat to start beating 200 beats per minute.
Okay.
That's what causes your sweaty palms and your hands, your extremities to shake, right? It's what causes tunnel vision, or for you to stutter, or all that kind of stuff. This is what the adrenaline is doing to you. So when you start thinking about and finding yourself in that situation, you can now recognize it and say, oh, this is a fear spike where I find myself, you know, feeling the actual physical manifestation of fear.
Right. There's some cues there that you can look for.
So you have the mental aspect, right? And then you have the physical aspect. And the physical aspect, from a physiological standpoint, it's easier at that point to be able to stop the process. And then we're going to talk about that in a few, you know, ways that we can do that. And so we want to understand it, like I said, both in a conceptual manner and in a physiological manner.
Right. And so some of those physical cues, like you just mentioned, so, I mean, this might be different for everybody, but some of the most common ones to look for so that you can at least be self-aware that you're having this experience is like clammy hands, sweating, heart beating out of your chest.
The heartbeat.
Shallow breathing.
Shallow breathing, that's a huge one. Thanks for reminding me. Usually what happens, and everybody's has experienced this before, when you have shallow, fast breathing that's in your chest instead of deep breathing through your diaphragm, which is what they teach us in things like yoga and all these different type of things, right? To be able to get enough oxygen into our brain and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely, that's a huge one.
Okay. Is there anything else that people should look for, like anything that we haven't mentioned that might be another physical cue?
Those are the biggest ones.
Okay.
And so that's why if you recognize those things, you can identify that you're in the fear loop.
Okay.
Right? Again, from a physiological standpoint.
Right.
And from a mental standpoint, you'll find yourself stuck with those negative thoughts, with watching that negative reel of all the terrible things that that could happen.
The what ifs and the hamster just going nuts.
So we can stop those in both levels. If we can stop it at a physiological level, it helps, right? Because if we, let's say, for example, we stop and we start focusing on our breathing, and we start doing some deep breathing with our diaphragm, like most people are used to doing. They've done it in a ton of different techniques, and like I said, yoga and meditation, like all that kind of stuff, and that usually helps us to at least get our brain right back to center.
Okay.
Right? And so that helps, again, physiologically. A lot of people that are self-aware enough and that have been practicing this type of stuff, and something that I do is, as soon as that negative reel starts, you just stop. You just say stop, right? And you stop that movie from playing. Again, you have to, like you said, you have to be self-aware enough to understand what's happening to you.
Yeah, that is something that takes a little bit of practice, because I know that I have suffered from panic attacks in the past. And so that was also part of my therapy, which is you have to be aware of the tape that you're playing in your brain first and actually hear what you're thinking. And then you can say, hey, like, cut it out. Like, just everything come to a stop. Let me collect my thoughts. And then I can go back to some semblance of, rationale, right? But if you are a little bit less experienced with this, or maybe, you know, right now this is the first big thing that's happened to you and you're like, I just am freaking out right now. Maybe you're not even sure that you're freaking out. Some of those physical cues can help people. It's almost like you can do it the opposite way. You can go, oh, I'm having these physical, you know, manifestations of fear. And then it kind of brings you back to, oh my gosh, if I actually pay attention, like my mind really is kind of running rampant right now.
Right.
So breathing is definitely one of those things that
everybody's going to be different. For instance, for me, exercise helps a lot. Whether it's just going out and taking a walk, again, that starts
getting some fresh air.
regulating your amount of oxygen and your breathing. Just taking a breath, you know, so to speak.
Yep.
That helps most people.
For me, it's and I actually had a therapist back when I was younger that really helped me with this, which is he said, completely change your physical state if you can, right? So one of his recommendations was either take a cold shower or a hot shower, like just completely like shock your body with a physical change. Or even if you wash your face, like some people don't want to have to like shower completely, but I was even talking to my mom about this, like even if you were to just wash your face with really cold water, just that kind of like shock value of doing that activity almost gives your body a chance to go, whoa, okay, now I feel like I'm kind of like off that loop that you were talking about. I can at least calm down a little bit. Breaks the cycle.
Which is essentially what you're trying to do, is you're trying to break the cycle.
Okay.
So once you're able to do that, again, we have access to our cognitive brain, then we can actually start looking for solutions. Most people, when they find themselves and get stuck in that fear loop, it's almost impossible to try to start thinking about your way out, right? And start thinking about solutions that make any sense, because you just can't.
Yeah.
Stuck. Also, again, physiologically, it's basically our reptilian brain is hijacking our modern, precognitive functions. And so we just have to break that cycle in order to be able to get any further. And that's why we wanted to make this the first video, because all of the other things that we want to help you with, whether it's, preparing for any eventualities in your business, in your home, and whatever, none of that stuff is going to take until you actually overcome the fear and get out of the fear loop.
Yep.
So if you're aware of these things, you understand these things, then everything else that we're going to teach you is going to be that much more likely to actually stick and to make sense to you than if you're just basically stuck in the fear loop and panicking, right? So.
Yep. Yeah. So we wanted to start here with, helping you guys be a little bit more self-aware about what might be actually happening with you. I mean, maybe you are completely self-aware and you're well practiced on this, but I know there's also a lot of people out there that this is, I mean, we've heard from a lot of our customers and stuff that they're like, this is the first time anything ever big like this has happened in my life. I'm just completely losing it, and we've been very, very empathetic to that. But I think also we wanted to turn around and give you some tools, some exercises that you can do, some thoughts to think about to help you kind of get back to that centered mindset, that more calm, cool, collected mindset. Because then when we start talking about those real actionable items in our next video, you guys will all be kind of on that same even keeled plane, or at least as close as possible.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else you think they should be doing at home between now and our next video?
No. If you find yourself, now that knowing everything that we've told you today, if you find yourself in the fear loop, stop and breathe. That's the biggest thing that you can do at that point. And then 2, visualizations matter. Stop that negative movie playing in your brain, and stop the negative talk. The way our inner monologue is very important. The way that we visualize things is very important. So if we can just stop that, we can very successfully stop that fear cycle, and we can start getting to work on solutions.
Okay, that sounds awesome. So we're gonna follow up with this with our next video. We're gonna be going into preparedness for our work life, which we hope is helpful. Again, if there's anything that wasn't clear about today's video, as I mentioned earlier, please feel free to comment below this video. I'm also going to put some links right below the video as to how you can contact us privately if you don't feel comfortable asking questions on a public forum like YouTube. Totally understandable and fine. And we will be in touch, within the next week to be able to follow up with this and bring you guys some more actionable things that you guys can do. But we wanted to start here and make sure we're all on the same starting page.
Hope that helps.
All right. Talk to you guys soon. Hope you all are doing well, and we'll see you guys next time. All right, bye.